Dan and Amy, so since the noblemen and magistrates in Springfield are convening today to vote on all kinds of gun control legislation, I got a question. This guy in Oswego, Dave Thomas, you saw the story, Amy.
Oh, yeah.
Man armed with an AR-15 helped stop a knife attack during an argument in Oswego. Dave Thomas witnessed the attack, went into his home, got his rifle, and ordered the suspect to stop. I ran back into the home, into my house, and grabbed my AR-15, grabbed the AR-15 over my handgun. It's just a bigger gun. I think a little bit more than an intimidation factor definitely played a part in him actually stopping. No shots fired. Suspect got away briefly before police captured him. Stabbing victim taken to the hospital is expected to recover. The AR-15 is my weapon of choice for home protection, Thomas said. It's light, it's maneuverable. If you're trained and know how to use it properly, it's not dangerous. And this is just a perfect example of a good guy with an AR-15 stopped a bad guy with a knife, and there were no lives taken. So all in all, it was a good day. I'd say so. So does he get to keep his AR-15? Does he get to?
If he's over 21, sure. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
That's a good guy with a gun. I'm glad we brought that story to people's attention.
Yeah. So, and now 3/4 of the General Assembly will summarily ignore it. Steve Moore, switching gears, our friend Steve Moore, Heritage Foundation economist, Wall Street Journal columnist, joins us now to talk things economics. Steve, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Good morning, guys.
So, hey, Warren Buffett, I know he's got that underpaid secretary that he's always complaining about, who pays more, a higher rate of on her income taxes than he does. Report out from Fox, $29 billion windfall.
Billion?
$29 billion windfall. Billion for Berkshire Hathaway. So what do you think is fair, since he's a fairness guy? What do you think is fair in terms of what percentage of that he should give his secretary, Steve?
Well, look, his secretary is going to get a big tax cut here, too, as well. I mean, if let's say his secretary makes $80,000 a year, she's going to get about a $2,000 tax cut. I don't know if you saw the big study. This has been a mini scandal that's developing, that the New York Times had a article yesterday saying that they found some. Actually, they looked all over the country to find some middle income person who was going to pay more taxes who's paying more taxes under the Trump plan. They couldn't find anyone, so they invented a couple, and they, with all sorts of conditions, they're sort of a Where's Waldo type of thing, trying to find the one person in America who's going to pay more taxes. And did you hear about this? So they have this, John and Jane taxpayer, and they said, well, this person's going to actually pay $3,000 more taxes. Well, it turns out one of the top tax experts at the University of Chicago found out that they made a big mistake, and this couple wasn't going to pay more taxes. They were actually going to pay less taxes, and now the New York Times has a lot of mud in their eye, and we'll see if they issue a retraction. None yet.
Well, first of all,
oh my God, that's sick.
No, I think that's unfair to the New York Times. Let me tell you why. We use composites for Obama's past girlfriends. We use a fictional woman, Julia, for Obama's reelection campaign. That fictional, yeah. You have Pajama Boy to sell Obamacare. We like fictional characters, and so using a fictional person to argue against tax cuts, however erroneously, that is standard operating procedure these days, Steve.
Well, it was fun. I mean, this was a follow-up from, I believe it was USA Today. I might be wrong, but it was one of the major newspapers issued a similar study, and I use that word with quotation marks around it, right before the tax cut passed, that found one person, living in Boston, Massachusetts, who had an income of $300,000 and was living with his mother and didn't have a house and all of these things. And this person is going to pay more taxes. It's like he's left-handed, he's bald, he's da-da-da-da. But look, 90% of people are paying less taxes right now. There was a good story, cover story in the front page story in the Washington Post yesterday. Democrats are pulling back on the tax cut message because they thought this tax cut would be extremely unpopular with voters, and now they're finding out that the vast majority of their voters in their district kind of like tax cuts for businesses and families.
Wow. So, I mean, do you think we're going to see even more tax cuts in the future? Because even my Democratic friends do love having more money in their paycheck.
Well, look, I don't think there's going to be more federal tax cuts. I mean, I think the big issue, and this is a big issue for the state of Illinois, we've capped the state and local tax deduction at $10,000 now. Many people in Illinois pay a lot more than $10,000 in property tax each year. Will there be a big tax cut coming from Springfield? Because if there isn't, Arlaf and I have just completed a study. We think that there are going to be well over 50,000 people in the next 2 years. High-income people are going to move out of Illinois, and they're going to move to those wonderful destinations like West Virginia and Kentucky. But they're going to Florida, they're going to Tennessee, they're going to Texas, and that's going to put an even bigger hole in your budget.
Well,
do you think Springfield, the people of Springfield, get it?
No.
Will they pass tax cuts so that people stay in the state?
No, not with the current leadership. They don't care because they have been chastened by the electorate. The electorate loves what we're getting here. And you guys, you and Art Laffer put together that rich states, poor states ranking every year.
Yep.
And it's interesting because U.S. News just came out with their ranking of the states by a bunch of categories. And the ones I want to focus on, fiscal stability and quality of life, where Illinois is not unlike it routinely is in your surveys, Steve. 50th in fiscal stability and 47th in quality of life. And quality of life has everything to do with fiscal stability.
Well, it also has to do things like with the quality of the schools, the fiscal situation, the tax burden, the quality of your public services. They're all bad. And I got to tell you, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was visited by, what's her name, Jeannie, the woman who's running for
Jeannie Ives.
And I was extremely impressed with her. And, everybody, there's a buzz going on. I don't know about in Illinois, but around the country, there's a buzz going on about Jeannie and how this conservative who has free market, conservative solutions to the problems of Illinois. I don't know. Is she catching on there? Because there's a real buzz around the country about her.
Well, that's encouraging to hear. I think she is catching on, although, again, the Illinois Republican Party is the junior partner to the Chicago Democrats. So, there's a bit of a headwind she's running into. But appreciate that perspective, Steve, as usual. Just one thing on the rankings, though, is speak to the rich states, poor states rankings that you do. And kind of the methodology and the meaning for families.
So I'm trying to remember. I know that Illinois is in the bottom 5. I think Illinois ranks 47th. So you're not as bad. Take a bow. You're not as bad as Maine, and you're not as bad as New York, and you're not as bad as California. But things are bad there, and your tax burden is through the roof. You have poor public service. Here's the thing. You get poor public services, and you pay a lot of money for them. So it's the worst of all worlds.
Yeah.
Your regulations are too high, and I've said this, so many times on your show over the years, Amy. Until Illinois becomes a right-to-work state, where workers have the right to join the union or not join the union, a lot of businesses just will not move into a state that is not right to work. And by the way, the dominoes are falling all around you. I mean, Michigan is now a right to work state. West Virginia is now a right to work state. We're working on Ohio. Wisconsin's right to work. I mean, you're going to be an island of forced unionism, and that doesn't work for the state.
Well, you're not making me feel very good about living in Illinois.
Although the Supreme Court could help us
out.
I
love Illinois, by the way. I'm a Chicago guy.
I know, he's a Detroiter.
I love Chicago. I think Chicago is one of the great cities in the world. It's it is being ruined by politicians in Springfield, and people around the country get it. Madigan has run that state. The governor doesn't run Illinois, right? It's run by Madigan.
And he doesn't want to.
State, guys? I mean, 30 years.
37?
More or less. He gets a lot of help from establishment Republicans, though, Steve, as you know. So
exactly.
That's the problem.
You need a revolution.
The Janus case, Steve, the Janus case could help do for Illinois what the politicians won't, can it? Janus versus the Janus v. AFSCME case, the fair share case before the Supreme Court.
Oh, that's a huge one. And, the liberals are going crazy because I think the liberals know they're going to lose that. This is about whether people should be forced to pay union dues, government employees. I say no. If you don't want to be in the union, look, the First Amendment talks about the right of association, right? You have the right to associate with groups you want to, but the First Amendment also says you have the right of not associating. If you don't want to associate with some group, you can't be forced to. And yet, in the case of unions, even if you don't want to associate with the union, you're forced to. And so I view this as strictly a First Amendment. I'm not anti-union. If people want to join a union and pay dues and have collective bargaining, I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is forcing people who don't want to be in the union to pay dues, especially when the money is going for political views that they don't agree with. I mean, 40% of union households voted for Donald Trump, and yet the unions are out there trying to destroy Trump.
Hey, speaking of Trump, he announced he's running again in 2020. Are you finally going to get that?
What a shock that is.
Yeah, right. But as
I
he's
was shocked.
as he's putting his cabinet together, you want me to put in a word for you for Treasury Secretary, or what do you want?
Yeah, more either cabinet secretary would be Treasury Secretary or Commerce Secretary, so I could reverse the stupidest thing that Donald Trump has done while he's president, which is these idiotic steel and aluminum tariffs, which are actually going to cost American jobs because they're going to make everything that we produce in America more expensive and less competitive. So, President Trump, if you're listening to this show, do not go forward with steel and aluminum tariffs. You're going to actually hurt the manufacturing base that you're trying to rebuild. You agree with me on that, right?
But you're also going to hurt the consumer because, canned vegetables, everything is canned that we buy. Those prices are going to go up. And beer is going to skyrocket, Dan. So get your 24 cases of Miller Lite right now.
Only drink
Amy, you get your A in economics today. This is all going to be pushed on to consumers. It's going to make things more expensive. And, think about this. Automobiles, manufactured products, machinery, all of that is made out of steel. How are we going to compete in global markets when we're using steel that's 20% more expensive than every other country? It just doesn't make any sense, even from a jobs perspective.
All right, you persuaded me. Secretary of Commerce Steve Moore.
Yes,
all right,
I'll do that.
The only problem is I don't believe that the Commerce Department should exist, so we're going to have to traverse that. But
I'm with you on that.
Steve Moore, CNN senior economist, Heritage Foundation, Wall Street Journal. Steve, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Take care, guys. Have a great week.
And he joined us